Well, joining us for this discussion on Kakaki, the African Voice this morning, we have Tunji Sanusi, financial analyst. I hope I got Sanusi, financial analyst. Thank you for coming, Tunji. It's good to have you.
Thank you.
We also have Dr. Emeka Okengwu, development expert, who is always here with us. Thank you for coming.
My pleasure.
Thank you, gentlemen. It's nice to have you join us. Now, the federal government has said that Sanusi's sack will have no effect on the Nigerian economy, but we saw at NSE, the NSE lost 186.59 billion market capitalization funds on the very next day Sanusi was suspended. Now, whether the federal government says so or not, these are the issues. The market forces are already reacting. What do you make of this?
Well, it's normal in the financial world and in the market that when you get such a news, there's going to be a jolt. You can't stop that. But you can't use that to gauge what the market is going to do. You probably look at the market in the short term, mid term, and the long term. When you have a challenge long term, that's when it's a major thing. But the news came on a Thursday. It's going to affect it. And the reason why they stopped the bond and the financial market is it's very volatile, because that's driven more by news. So you need to stop it. It's done all over the world. If there's a big news in America, they have to stop that, because that is something that is very global. People are trading money all over the place. It's just to give it the breathing space for the market to actually get the news in. But I haven't said that, actually. Without Sanusi's suspension or sack, there's still going to be some form of volatility this year anyway. This is an election year. So a lot of investors have looked at it, and because of the way we're actually heating up the polity, it's going to be extremely difficult for somebody who has money here to look at it like that. The politicians are not playing the game in a way where somebody will say, oh, when I lose, I'm going to move on. But they're just gauging it, because before Sanusi's sack, you will find out that the market has been doing up and down, which is what it should be. There should be a winter and summer for the market. You can't have a market that keep going up or keep coming down. Now we're getting to that point where the market is moving up to where we call the support level. At the support level, it will go up and it will come down. So that people are not just taking profit. Some will say, I want to get in, and some will say, I want to get out. So that's what it is. But you must get that kind of jolt if the news of the suspension of the CBN governor. That is a massive offense, and it should do something at that time.
All right, let me come to Dr. Emeka, the chairman of the governor of Federal Reserve System of America, Dr. Janet Yellen, took over from 1st of February this year. And in her incoming, there was a little bit of jolt when it came to stock market reports, and which is, of course, what Tunji has stated here. But let's look at suspension and removal, which is a totally different thing than when somebody assumes a new office. We have seen the fluctuation in the market rates, and he says perhaps it might continue, for some time this year. We're going to see a lot of volatility, in this year's market. How long do you think this will happen, especially with the result of the suspension, or perhaps definitely suspension of Sanusi?
Thank you, Adora. First and foremost, I think we need to define what has happened here, and let's also identify the actors. You see, because if we get everybody, like I keep saying, on the same page, it's a lot easier for us to now have an interesting conversation. One, you have the Financial Reporting Council of Nigeria. I think the first thing we need to do is to look at the legal frameworks that support that council. Was it a council that was set up by President Jonathan, or was it a council that was set up by law? And if this council was set up by law, do they have the powers to do what they have done? And who constitutes this council? I'll give you news. Central Bank is a member of that council. Let's start from there. They're part of the board of the Financial Reporting Council. Central Bank is there. Inland Revenue is there. ICANN is there. Urban is there. Reporting, everybody is there that deals in that financial services sector. That is key for us to be able to understand. The second thing is that you now have the president, who, if you know, everybody is sang this section 11, F. Let's also look at what that section says. The central bank governor shall remain removed by the president on the conditions that such removal is supported by 2/3 of the Senate. What does it mean? It does not mean that the president has to go and meet the Senate to get their support before removing Sanusi. It means that after removing the central bank governor, all he needs to do is to be able to now present his reasons for removing him and then get the 2/3 support of the Senate. Why am I trying to get into all this? Because you see, people are beginning to just think that the man woke up in the morning and then for whatever it was worth, Sanusi is sacked or suspended. I think that would be taking it a little bit out of cuff. We should be able to first and foremost deal with the issues that can remove a man who is a central bank governor, because his utterances, his body movement, his actions or inactions have collateral, effects on the whole polity and politics, economics and economy of our system. So what I think we should be focusing on first and most importantly is, why was the CBN governor suspended? And what credibility or otherwise has the Financial Reporting Council or their findings on the total and general policy of our nation? When you are talking about somebody who is a whistleblower, okay, there are two kinds of whistleblowers. You can actually be the thief and you're shouting thief. It happens.
Right.
Okay, it does not always mean that. That's why they say to you, he's not the one who goes to. If you run to the police station, it's not every time you're the first one who calls the police. I mean, the Igbo people say it's not the person who calls police that usually wins the case, and that's why you now have what we call this process. And I think that is what everybody in this country should be demanding and insisting. Why? Because Sanusi is a risk person. His pedigree and currency is risk management. So for what is what, for me, as Emeka Okengwu, if I were Sanusi, if I were to speak to him, I would say to him, sir, you have built this reputation over a 30, 40-year period in your banking as a risk manager. Please insist that whatever it is that they have against you, political or otherwise, insist that process that has not or will not damage your risk currency is not true.
Okay. Now, Tunji, Dr. Emeka did talk about the fact that the president, in Section 11, he said the president can remove, but will go to the House and then get a 2/3 majority in the House who will support the removal. But what you didn't talk about is, if the 2/3 does not support the president, what then happens if that doesn't happen? But that is not the case right now. We already have an acting governor, and we also already have a name for a nomination, which looks to me like that issue is already concluded. Now, just like we said again earlier, I want to ask if the suspension will have negative effect on foreign investors, because just like we all know what the Constitution says and the CBN Act says about removing a CBN governor who is a major player as far as the economy is concerned. If foreign investors believe that the process that removed him was not, was not through due process, will they still have confidence in investing in the Nigerian economy?
Okay, I'm going to answer your question in two ways. On one side, the political side. On the other side, what the international community is talking about. All through the weekend, when I knew I was going to come with this program, I tried to look at all the international international magazine, international size, top investing thing, because I'm in the investment world. So you get a lot of groups that people will talk about it. I think the feeler that we are getting from them is that it's just politics. And we still need to be very careful how this is done. I was checking my tweet this morning before coming here, and most of the people that are talking about it are politicians. Governor Amechi talking about it, Governor Fashola talking about it. Investors don't look at politicians as people who decide where the direction is going to go. If it's going to have a very strong implication, they would have called before this has happened. Just like Doctor said, it's a process. that has gone on for a while. So people like Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala would have known where that has come through, and they would have called her. Remember, she used to be World Bank World Bank MD. They still talk. They still want to gauge her. They just came back from Davos. Davos was just about 2-3 weeks ago. That decision, if they're going to take it, is a decision that people would have asked those questions. And I must say clearly too that a lot of top investors outside Nigeria too are not very, very comfortable with some of the utterances of Sanusi at the time too, because it's just somebody that on the spur of the moment, he would just say something. Whereas if we say something, the CRR, for example, it's a big thing. I mean, you're taking public funds, and what you do is you just wake up and say you're going to take public funds. It affects the banks, and that's very big. My own point about this, and what I see, and I've seen it a long time, since 2007. I was fortunate to be part of those people who were looking at the Act. The Act has given the CBN Governor too much power. And the same Act is not giving any leeway for control of the CBN Governor. The CBN Governor is the chairman of the board, and from the Act, it's only the board that has the power to sanction the CBN Governor. And then the 4 deputy governors are members of that board.
And so the CBN Governor is the chairman.
Is the chairman. So you already have 5 votes for you, and you know that in Nigeria, in the institution, if you have a very strong person, every other person will follow you. So if he gets the 5 votes, 4 votes plus his own, then what is he looking for in a board of about 9 or 10? But my own argument is, and I keep saying it, I think that Sanusi has given this country an opportunity for us to ask questions about that Act. Going back to 2007, going back to before Sanusi came, one of the biggest challenges I have then, and I spoke to a few people, was that when Soludo started having this intention of going to run for Anambra State government, as a governor of Anambra State, that was when we had these shenanigans with the bank executive. They were just doing whatever they want to do, and people were closing their eyes to it. You can find that it's a very good platform with the kind of power the CBN governor has to use it to get a political office. And the way it's going, I hope I'm proven wrong. If Sanusi comes out tomorrow to want to run for an office, then that means there's a problem with that law. It's either we amend it to say, for you to be a CBN governor, you cannot contest any elective office 10 years after you've left. Maybe that will bring the professionals to come into it. But if you have an office where you can donate 163 billion to any cause you wish for, believe you me, that's a stepping stone to get into a bigger office. Soludo has done it. He ran for Anambra State government, and he ran from CBN governor. So those are the things that we need to look at, and that is the amendment I'm talking about. But for international investors, they will come out and talk because it's their money. The fact that they haven't said anything, they looked at it as political. The Economist is the only one that talked about it, and they talked about it from the political angle. And then every other thing that has happened, if you look back at it, it's well orchestrated. The Financial Reporting Council talked about this sometime in May last year. The president queried the CBN governor in April. He replied in May. The report came out sometime around May or June. And then from September, letters started coming out. I mean, he wrote the president, and then the issue of going to Senate to declare all this whistleblowing. My own question is, Sanusi had that letter from President Yar'Adua, may so rest in peace, long time ago, that kerosene subsidy should be removed. Why did he keep that letter for that long? He should have come out to say, listen, there is no subsidy in kerosene. It's not Jonathan that has done it. It's Yar'Adua that has done it. Why is it coming out now? So it's a game that they're playing. And then the money world looks at the game and say, hold on here. Logically, are we going to look at it from that point to say, okay, this guy is building public opinion on his side. But my own point is, I kept saying it, I've been on your sister show, The Morning Show, so many times. And I'm saying that you can play politics with anything. A politician can tell you something today and come back tomorrow and say, I didn't say that. But you can't do that with the people that keeps our money. If the CBN governor says something today, he comes back tomorrow to say, I didn't say that, the world market would react. If the Minister for Finance does the same thing, you can't lie when it comes to money, because money is 1 + 1 is 2. In politics, 1 + 1 could be anything, because the politicians know how to play their game, and they keep changing. You know, today they can say, oh, Sanusi should not be sacked, and then tomorrow they wake up again and say, oh, Sanusi should be sacked. Because all they do, we just need to be careful, especially the opposition, should look at this as something that we should stay away from, playing politics with it. But when governors start saying it's unconstitutional, even though we haven't gone to the court, then I think we're having challenges. We can play with the politics, but don't let us play with the economy, because if the economy goes down, then we can't have anybody to rule.
True, and talking about politics, Dr. Emeka, you spoke about due process and the story before this time, before we got here. But before, Dr. Emeka, just before we went on that, Tunji was talking about, the politics and, of course, the economy of all of this saga that has unfolded. And I remember that Mark Carney, who is the governor of Bank of England, was told times again to separate market certainty away from politics, and at no time should they mix the two. Even Dr. Janet Yellen of America has been told that time too many. And what's important is that these people are perhaps the third strongest individuals in the country, because they hold the secrets of the economy of their countries in their hands, and that is very, very trivial. Now let's look at what has happened with the result of all the monies missing, and people saying that that's the reason why perhaps the suspension was even given in the first place. Dr. Emeka, do you agree with that?
I was here, and I remember I said to you, you can't be talking about missing money when the person who's supposed to be holding the money is one saying that the money is missing. And I said it's not possible. It is impossible for 49 billion to be missing from a country like Nigeria. It can't be done. Okay, and by the end of the day now we've reduced it to 6 billion, which would have been a more manageable figure. Okay, and I said to you, if I was Sanusi, the moment I had mentioned that first figure, and I agreed to a second figure, I'd have just resigned and left. That's what Tunji is trying to say. You see, the central bank governor is just not any person. The central bank governor is the chief finance advisor to the Nigerian government. So what he says, and this is what causes the ripples in the market, it is not the person, it is the position. And when you begin to tamper with that position, that is when people now begin to now say, no, this shouldn't happen. Because they believe that before you become the central bank governor, or after you become the central bank governor, you've become an authority. And whatever you say or do not say can mean so much. Right now, for crying out aloud, somebody had come in here to say Nigeria makes 11 trillion. And he doesn't understand why we're going to be borrowing money. And I said to the person, listen, my brother, you don't make 11 trillion. 11 trillion is made from your country. Those are two different things. I just want to put it in context. So that 49 billion you're talking about has been made from your country, not by you. So when you now look at the process of how this money was made, who brought the JV, who brought the technology, who brought the storage, who brought the marketing, who brought this, and you begin to see all sets of consultants, all sets of agents, all sets of the traffickers and all these people, just because of one thing. You do not have a national oil company. You have what you call a multinational oil company. That's where your problem is coming from, Adora. So when people are talking about 49 billion missing, 20 billion missing, 30 billion missing, and I said to them, the only way these monies can miss is through what they call moonlighting. Government had come out to say to you, we are losing close to $800 million or something every day to oil thieves. Anyone that comes into government coffers would always be, the easiest thing you can trace is money. However, and this is what you just said, remove politics from your economic development. I've always also argued with you ladies that what we have in Nigeria is not economic development. What we have in Nigeria is economics. And there are two things. In economics, you have demand and supply running the game. In economy, you have production leading to what you call demand-driven infrastructure. These are two different things. So for me, again, I think maybe I need to also bring this in. We are talking about Senate. Let us also remember that even the Senate were going to get the 2/3 make a certain Sanusi's removal, does not even have any oversight, over the CBN. They are not, CBN is not, their funding program is not subject to any appropriation or legislation. So when you are even oversighting, Now, what are we talking about? A report says you have spent 163 billion naira and then 1.2 billion in entertaining police. 1.2 billion, for crying out aloud, ladies. So, I mean, let us be able to, let all these things be allegations for me. Because if it was me or a politician that has spent 1.2 billion naira entertaining the police, which is where I think my brother Tunji is coming from, why is a central bank governor spending 1.2 billion to entertain police? What will be the outcome? What will be the reasons? But we're trying to say, for me, we won't come here to condemn or stand by somebody. As analysts, we should be, we are. Let's be able to look at the things as they are in themselves and separate. Because I asked the first question, first and foremost, did we have a Sanusi who was as clean as the whistle he was blowing? That's the first question. And then we've come to say nothing has happened. This man was just removed because somebody, had felt he was now saying the things he shouldn't have said. And he has set up a committee, a kangaroo committee, to condemn him. Was it President Jonathan that set up that committee? That's very key and important for us to question. Because that's where we can now begin to now draw this separation or parallels that you want us to go towards. But for me, I think the issues here are very simple. How does somebody become central bank governor? What criteria and qualifications makes you central bank governor? You know what it is? Whim and caprice of Mr. President.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Now let's look at some of Sanusi's policies. Possibly one of the most popular one will be the cashless policy in the country. Now he's done quite a number with the issue of banks as well. Some banks whose owners have been convicted for fraud. Some have said that the banks should be restored back to them. Let's remove the person of Sanusi from some of those policies. Now, do you think those policies should be continued? Were those policies strong enough to help the Nigerian economy, and should they be sustained?
I first of all, let's put it in perspective. I think you should go on to answer your question directly, but I want you to know too that wasn't the Sanusi's policy. It was a policy that's been started by Soludo. Aside from the political end of Soludo going to run as Anambra State Governor, he's done extensive work in CBN. I mean, the last time he was at the National Assembly, he brought piles of book of what they've done in that area. I give Sanusi kudos for continuing that policy. And that is why the autonomy came from in the first place. Just like I said, I was part of those people who were looking at that act. I mean, when the bill was sent. On one side, the argument is give them autonomy so that they can continue whatever policy they have that is good. And then Sanusi built on the cashless thing that Sanusi started on, and he did it so well that you are so proud as a Nigerian. I keep saying to people, I was in New York, and I brought out my Nigerian credit card, and I gave it to the guy. The person looked at it, and he was extremely very concerned to say, I haven't seen this. This is not a Bank of America. This is not a... And then the card was swiped. And then the whole thing went through. I felt so good that I was a Nigerian, that I can use my bank card anywhere in the world. That is one great policy that they saw through. The autonomy that is given to CBN is not something that you can turn around and do anything. But the biggest challenge he has, even with those banks, it's very difficult now to sell Kingston Bank, Main Street Bank, and then the Enterprise Bank. And the reason why that has happened is because investors are very wary. He never managed it well. There are different options that he could have used at that time. I am not in any way saying that those bank executives were not frivolous. They were reckless. And I totally agree with him that they needed to go. But there's still so many ways. And we said it here. It's not just bringing it down, and now it's costing the taxpayer 1 trillion. AMCON is still another disaster. We have to find a solution to AMCON, because AMCON is going to be the biggest one. AMCON is back at the National Assembly looking for an amendment to their act. That tells you that there's a problem. When you keep looking for an amendment to a law, then there's a problem around that law. There's something that needs to be done. So that's where the challenge is. Nobody is taking it away from him. But he does one good thing and then makes one great statement that becomes another big issue. Now, Sanusi's issue is taking Nigeria back and forth. And the only people that will profit from it, with all due respect, is the media. It's the media that will profit from this, because it's a media thing. The decision has been taken. Sanusi's history, as far as I'm concerned, as a CBN governor, because the deputy governor is the one that is acting on his behalf. So nothing is going to change as per the policy. The beauty of it is now they can work far more closer with the Ministry of Finance, who would have gone far ahead. But I do know from body language that the Minister of Finance and the CBN governor do not really see eye to eye. And from what has happened, I'm almost certain that even the CBN governor with the president do not actually sit to have conversation. I don't know it for sure, but if this had happened since last year, then there would have been an inbuilt anger between the two of them. But I know from every time you see the finance minister and the CBN governor, the body language does not say that these two people are talking. Because the man just come, bring something, and then they have to go back and look at it. So maybe with this Sarah Alade, we can come together, because this year is actually, like I said, it's going to be the most volatile year. This election is going to be one of the keenly contested election in Nigeria, because the opposition feels that we might win, the presidency feels that we might win. So there's that thing that there will be. But we need to get to that point to say, moving on now, we need the Ministry of Finance that is looking at the fiscal policies and the CBN to work together. Let
me bring Dr. Emeka in here just before we go. You talked about due process earlier and you talked about procedure. And, of course, we've seen a new nominee to be sent to the Senate, yet we're still undergoing investigations of the former occupant of office that is yet to be completed. And when you talk about process, I know that in America usually that the 7 governors spend about 14 years in office and are interchanged, even if you're going to change the governor of that board. And every governor spends about 2 years and then a maximum of 4 years. In England is the same thing, but they do not go outside the banking sector to choose a replacement. However, a new nominee has been sent. Of course, we saw about Emefiele. Do you think that this is right, even though the investigations are still underway and the processes of removal are yet to be completed?
Well, you see, the president gave a reason, because usually what happens is that there's what they call a pre-retirement leave. If this didn't happen, the proper thing was that Sanusi should have proceeded on his pre-retirement leave probably by the end of this month or next month. It's usually 3 months to the time you're leaving. Okay, and probably what had happened here is, and I remember if I listened to that letter when the one was being read well, the reasons they gave was that the present governor, was going to be leaving office by June. So I think the assumption is that now you're suspended into your retirement leave. However, you've raised some very critical, and deep questions, and which now comes into the politics, and economics of our country's economic process and development. And that's why, what answers your question is what I keep telling you each time we talk. We are doing what they call cherewere. It means wait and take. Dubai is the market, all of us will start on India. China becomes the market, all of us will start on India. This other one becomes the market, all of us will start on India. And until you're able to in place a process that ensures that your infrastructure is not superstructure and politics driven, but driven by demand, then you cannot begin to now talk about this process. What should interest us now is Emefiele comes and somebody says, oh, Emefiele, everybody knows that he's from the Niger Delta, so Ngozi has gone to bring her person. And that's now a precondition for them to be able to now work well. And probably we'll now get another president who is from the northern, maybe APC wins for an instance, and then the man is a northerner, and then the Emefiele now has 5 years of stress. He can't wait for the 5 years to go, so a northerner will be brought in, which was part of also Soludo's problems. So for me in this country, until we are able to develop a system, I don't understand, that can beat us, that is beyond us. Emefiele, can we be able to look at his pedigree? How did he emerge as MD? Was it the board that brought him? Was it the process? Is he from the banking system? What experiences does he have? Because in being central bank governor, it goes beyond just being a banker. You must be an astute development person. You must understand the collateral issues, which probably was why, Sanusi felt he could say what he wanted to say, when he wanted to say it, and how he wanted to say it, and he couldn't be bothered. And this is a guy that says to you, can I tell you guys something? I'm going to sit down here until June, and nobody on earth can remove me from this position. And then they remove it. He says, okay, I'm talking to my lawyers, and by the end of the day, I'm going to make certain that the next person, central bank governors, are just not removed at the whims and caprices of the man. You are his aide. Can we just announce it as that? That's what it is, the aide to the president. So until we're able to in place, like Tunji said, they were looking at the act. In drawing autonomy does not necessarily guarantee you independence. It's something people must know, that you're autonomous, yeah. Nobody, I mean, your bosses they could give you some questions, but you ask what you want to ask. He gives you autonomy. But it doesn't give you a right, or for me to come in here and start yelling and insulting people, because you now caution people on what to say and not what to say. Okay. So autonomy and independence must be defined in their proper context. And in this case, I am telling you, and I'm talking professionally, what should bother us is what we'll have inside our report. And Nigerians must insist that we follow it to the letter.
Thank you so much. I think we'll leave that as a closing cap there. Thank you so much, Dr. Emeka Okengwu, expert development, who's been speaking to us on Sanusi suspension. He says we do not run an economy, we're playing economics for now until we begin to think development. And Tunji, I want to see financial analyst is also talking about, of course, this might continue because 2015 is going to see the biggest players in the election, of course, come through. Let's see how that works out.